on Monday, the voting machine company Dominion Voting Systems sued former President Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, for defamation, seeking $1.3 billion for what it describes as a months-long, quote, big lie about the company. Dominion had previously threatened to sue Giuliani, who subsequently doubled down on his false claims about the company, even after Dominion had already sued the pro-Trump lawyer Sidney Powell for the same amount of money and had sent warning letters to various right-wing media outlets and opinion hosts, so-called opinion hosts like Fox's Lou Dobbs and Fox's Sean Hannity and Fox's Janine Pirro. Fox's Maria Bartiromo, etc. And just for good measure, late last week, the company also sent a similar warning to wingnut pillow salesman Mike Lindell, the CEO of the My Pillow company, which actually likely has the $1.3 billion that Dominion has been filing suit and demanding so far against Powell and now Giuliani. If I am Mike Lindell at this point, I'm not sleeping well, no matter what pillow I'm actually using. Again and again in the suit filed on Monday, just as we have been repeatedly explaining on this show for the bulk of the past 2 months, Dominion notes that Rudy Giuliani was willing to go much further with his evidence-free fraud claims about the company in the court of public opinion, in the public sphere, than he was willing to go in the actual court of law, where lying can result in very serious penalties. If he actually had the evidence that the company had stolen the election for Joe Biden in some way, as he was repeating and lying over and over again, he would have included that evidence in his lawsuits. But he never did, because there is no such available known evidence. Period. Instead, he simply slandered and defamed the company on behalf of hoping to get a preemptive pardon, I guess, from Donald Trump, which, by the way, that never came, and in hopes of making money selling gold and medical supplement pills to seniors on his radio show and his podcast shows. So in its 107-page filing on Monday, Dominion alleges of Giuliani, quote, although he was willing to make false election fraud claims about Dominion and its voting machines in a court of law because he knew those, because he was unwilling to make false election fraud claims about Dominion and its voting machines in a court of law because he knew those allegations are false, he and his allies manufactured and disseminated the big lie, which foreseeably went viral and deceived millions of people into believing that Dominion had stolen their votes and fixed the election. The suit, filed, by the way, by one of the nation's top defamation attorneys that Dominion has hired, alleges that Giuliani knowingly and maliciously spread false information about Dominion for months for his own political and financial ends. The strategy began, in the suit's telling, even as election results were still rolling in. According to Axios, who quoted an Axios report that was quoted in the complaint itself, Giuliani laid out his plan in the early hours of November 4. The night of Election Day on November 3rd. He said, quote, there's no way Trump lost. This thing must have been stolen. He said, just say we won Michigan. Just say we won Georgia. Just say we won this election. Dominion later cited several instances of Giuliani using his YouTube show, ironically named, seriously, do you know what his YouTube show is called, Desi Doyen?
No.
Common Sense with Rudy Giuliani. Ironic. Anyway, he used that show to talk about Dominion and election integrity, and then hawking everything from cyber theft protection to joint pain supplements and cigars and precious metals and a so-called conservative alternative to the AARP. It also mentioned reports the Dominion suit that he demanded $20,000 daily from Trump for his work, money which Trump, by the way, reportedly has since refused to pay him because that's how Donald Trump rolls. Filed in the federal district court in Washington, D.C., the complaint charges Giuliani of carrying out, quote, a viral disinformation campaign about Dominion made up of, quote, demonstrably false allegations as based on more than 50 statements Giuliani made at legislative hearings, on Twitter, on his podcast, and in the right-wing news media, where he spun a fictitious narrative of a plot by one of the biggest voting machine manufacturers in the country to flip votes to now President Joe Biden. The suit at times goes into detours to discredit the witnesses that Giuliani cited in his public crusade against Dominion, including an anonymous purported Venezuelan military officer who asserted that evil communist voting software was, quote, in the DNA of American voting machine companies. And that, of course, is where I come in, and my own accurate, detailed, exclusive investigative reporting at bradblog.com on Dominion voting systems and several other voting machine companies from about 2008 to 2010, which these clowns lifted and bastardized and reimagined to tell a completely different story than the actual independently and verifiably accurate story that I reported at bradblog.com 10 years ago. But using the basis of my story, which was Dominion's 2010 purchase of another voting machine company that had once been owned by still another voting machine company that was once tied to Venezuela and the now dead Hugo Chavez, in order to now pretend that the now dead Hugo Chavez and or his friends in communist countries like China and Cuba, and also, too, just for fun, they threw in Italy and Spain and Germany, not Georgia yet, getting ahead of myself. Somehow, they used software. All of these countries in this, worldwide scheme somehow use software to flip votes on Dominion voting machines from Trump to Biden. Of course, they didn't bother to ask me if they had the story right when they were citing my original reporting because they did not care. They just took the words Venezuela and Hugo Chavez pretty much and ran with it, slandering and defaming a company and its employees who, as the lawsuit details today, began receiving the most vile of death threats to make up a completely evidence-free story that Donald Trump was robbed. Now, as I noted a few weeks ago when Sidney Powell was also sued by Dominion and when they sent threat letters about these suits to her, warning that these would be coming, they sent these letters to her, to Giuliani, to the wingnut media outlets, Fox News and Newsmax and OAN, all of whom had repeated all of these bogus claims. So as I mentioned, when these letters started coming out from Dominion to all of these people, I take no joy in defending any voting machine company because I don't believe that private corporations should have any part whatsoever in our public elections, much less with their software, secret software or otherwise. Several of these companies have spent many years misrepresenting their systems, lying about their systems. So make no mistake, I am no fan of Dominion or any of these other voting machine companies. For example, the much larger ES&S or the smaller Hart InterCivic or any of the tiny mom and pop companies that now pollute our public elections.
Yeah, I mean, your basic bottom line is there should be no secret software and no private companies running our public elections.
Some of the wingnut outlets who misreported on the company after receiving threats of lawsuits from Dominion have now retracted and apologized for their inaccurate reporting in hopes of avoiding a legal battle. They are smart. This month, for instance, the right-wing American Thinker website, which is a right-wing propagandist website, they were smart enough at least to post an apologetic note saying that its reports about Dominion, quote, are completely false and have no basis in fact, unquote, and that, quote, it was wrong for us to publish these false statements. Well, good for them. Good for them. Now, I've heard from a number of my election integrity colleagues that they are now worried about all of this, about these lawsuits. The idea of this both putting folks like us in danger of similar lawsuits, of being sued by these companies, and also the idea that all of this will now make it more difficult to make the case about concerns about these voting systems. The latter part of that may be true, as Democrats over-argue their belief that these systems are great and that they're totally secure and they couldn't possibly change the results of an election. News for those Democrats. In fact, those machines absolutely can change results of an election, and the evidence for mistallied elections is often very, very difficult to get at. But yes, they can change results. But the fact that they can change results is not the same as saying they did change the results. And guess what? In this case, while they might have changed the results, there is absolutely no evidence that they actually did. In fact, there's quite a bit of evidence that they did not. Like unprecedented statewide hand counts and recounts in Georgia, and the fact that most jurisdictions where Dominion was used actually went to Donald Trump. Pretty stupid way for Dominion to steal the election, to give all of those counties to Donald Trump, don't you think? Am I worried that I could be sued by Dominion? Well, anybody can sue anybody, I guess. But as I've been reporting on Dominion for more than a decade now, and I've never received a warning, much less a lawsuit, I suspect that's because they know that everything I have reported about them was actually true and not made up out of whole cloth, as Powell and Giuliani and Fox News and Pillow Man and all the rest have done. Here's Giuliani at one of those phony legislative hearings that he was holding around the country after the election and before Joe Biden was sworn in, spreading lies about Dominion. This one at the beginning of December in the Michigan state legislature. And see if you can spot, whether you know how these voting machines work or not, see if you can spot the lie here.
Whatever you want to say about Dominion, read its history. Read the history of Dominion, and you'll get an idea of what a crooked company it is, which maybe is the reason they don't want to show up here. They really don't want to tell you that the two of them that own it are Venezuelans, and they brought the two Smartmatic owners, they brought the two guys who are Canadians down to meet Chavez just 2 years ago. They don't want to tell you that.
Well, yeah, maybe they don't want to tell you that because it is not true. And how do we know that? Well, if they met Hugo Chavez just 2 years ago, it must have been one hell of a gruesome meeting, since Chavez had been dead for 5 years by that time. Never mind, you notice how he skipped from Dominion to Smartmatic, which is a completely different company that has nothing to do with any of the swing states. Smartmatic has only one contract in the U.S. For voting systems, and guess where it is? It's here in Los Angeles. Yes, the new unverifiable touchscreen voting systems used here in Los Angeles, which I have not heard the Trump campaign contest as of yet. That's the only place that Smartmatic has anything to do with American elections at this time, and yet somehow Rudy Giuliani is turning Dominion into Smartmatic so that he can claim that they were down there meeting with dead Hugo Chavez 2 years ago. So yes, I am delighted to see them sued, and I'm happy to testify on behalf of Dominion if they ever call me, although I doubt they will, because I don't know that they would like what I have to say about their systems either. Although you can rest assured, at least I will tell the truth about them. Dominion weighed Giuliani's claims about election integrity against public records and those who came out vocally against the stolen election narrative. That would include, quote, reliable sources like Trump appointee Bill Barr, Trump appointee Chris Krebs, Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp, Georgia's Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, federal judges, and 59 election security experts. By the way, some of those folks are anything but reliable sources. Still, you can't make stuff up, period. Which, I certainly know as a journalist, you would think as an attorney, which I guess Rudy Giuliani still is, you would think he would know. Using third-party Twitter analytics data, Dominion showed that Giuliani's assertions about the company reached potentially hundreds of millions of Americans. The company reprinted pages and pages of tweets and other comments from web users responding to things that Rudy was saying about Dominion's role in stealing Trump's rightful second term. They were levying appalling death threats that I cannot even read on this show from the lawsuit, frankly, or I would be fined dozens of times by the FCC. But these were death threats against Dominion and against its employees, its contractors. And leading legislators in multiple states to declare their intent to review existing Dominion contracts and maybe get rid of them altogether based on these completely false charges that Trump and Giuliani and so forth were spreading through social media. According to the suit, Giuliani's false tweets about Dominion were liked over 534,000 times, over 500,000 times, and were foreseeably retweeted over 160,000 times. The retweets disseminated Giuliani's false tweets to over 1.5 million Twitter accounts. Based on the average followers and the number of retweets overall, Giuliani's false tweets about Dominion potentially reached more than 331 million Twitter accounts, or about the same number of accounts as the entire U.S. population. As a result, the suit continues of the viral disinformation campaign. Dominion has been unfairly subjected to the hatred, contempt, and distrust of tens of millions of American voters and the elected officials who are Dominion's actual and potential customers have received emails, letters, and calls from their constituents demanding that they avoid contracting with Dominion or using Dominion machines. Now, of course, I'm all in favor of, demanding that they don't use Dominion machines, that they don't contract with Dominion. But again, based on facts and the truth, not based on made-up lies.
Yes, you can certainly hate Dominion, and you can hate the idea of them running up our public elections, but hate them for factual reasons, not for made-up reasons like Giuliani is trying to put forth.
That's what he did, and now he's being sued for $1.3 billion of it. Dominion has spent more than $500,000 on personal security, they say. The company claimed to have incurred more than $1 million in total expenses relating to the disinformation campaign since the election. The suit says Dominion was not founded in Venezuela to fix elections for Hugo Chavez, as Giuliani and others have falsely claimed. It was, they note, founded in 2002 in CEO John Paulus's basement in Toronto to help blind people vote on paper ballots. Despite a retraction demand letter in December and even after the January 6th attack on the Capitol, Giuliani kept up with his Dominion attacks. Indeed, to this day, he continues to double down on the big lie, Dominion concludes in their suit.